Hey there, it's Dragon. Now, unfortunately, this is going to be an only me podcast. Phoenix is a little sick, and hopefully, she will get feeling better quickly. She will be back for the next podcast, but we will do this podcast just with me. So, enjoy this podcast. Today's episode is going to be aliens and UFOs or UAPs, whatever you want to call them now. So I've actually had a experience with, would say, UFO. Now, me personally didn't happen to me, but it happened to about a mile south where I live. It was about when I was 13 years old, 12 or 13. It was, if I remember correctly, it was a lady driving late at night. She claimed that there was a helicopter chasing her. So she was actually blowing through stop signs, going across roads, going across highways, just tailing it home. She called the police. The police caught up to her and saw this apparently helicopter, and she described was two bright lights following her down the county road. So when the police arrived, the sheriff at the time was, I believe, Deputy Geis. What he saw was not a helicopter; it was a disc, shining light down on the car. When the cop caught up to the disc shot straight up and disappeared. So, I live out in the country. I live out in sticks. I know how satellites move. I know how planes move. Unfortunately, this time we have drones. So you don't really know, but you do see certain things in the sky sometimes here that are unexplained, so they would be UFOs. Recent events have sparked this. I wanted to get this podcast out. There was another podcast that should named Unknown. I only watch this podcast when they have a UFO specialist or people have spotted UFOs. There was a Navy pilot of the name of Ryan Graves. Now, he was a trainee that trained air pilots. He was getting ready. I think he was getting ready to go to Afghanistan, and he experienced what he described spheres, and then inside the sphere, translucent sphere, was a black square, and they were told just don't bother them by the admiral that was there. So they just did their missions. They were getting ready for war. They were just focused on their mission and never got to that point. There was also another pilot on this podcast who has video. It's the infamous Tic Tac video. You could actually see that video on one of my other videos that I have here on YouTube. Another guest that was on this podcast was Bob Lazar. Now, Bob, he supposedly worked and was hired by the government at Roswell, and he worked at, I believe it was Site 4. He was a genius. He was, by what he said, he was hired to go and try to re-engineer the technology that the UFOs would use to fly. Uh, Eventually, he was fired and supposedly took something called Element 115, which that was back in 1984 or 1983. And then in 2004, before 2004, they said Element 115 did not exist. But in 2004, the government came out and said Element 115 actually exists. So that makes you wonder, you know. Also, Bob Lazar also mentioning seeing stepping in and actually being in one of these UFOs. It was nice, smooth. He said there was no like sharp edges, no points. It was perfectly nice and smooth. Inside there was carvings on the metal. There was like a cockpit. He also claimed to have seen other spaceships, like ones that have been there long time before the modern man, like being dug up from the earth. So that's a question to be answered. How long have UFOs or aliens been around? I believe they've been around a very long time. So we could look to the history. There's been several TV shows like Ancient Aliens. I've actually never seen an episode of Ancient Aliens. So I did some research. I went on my phone. Now I've always wondered about this. So the Egyptian time, you think of the pyramids, okay? Not the one behind me, but the pyramids of Egypt. Some people have speculate that aliens have built pyramids, which is possible. I think they did a research on how if the people of Egypt built the pyramids by themselves, they would need a 15-mile ramp built to get to the top of the pyramid. Could have been 5-mile ramp, but still, that's a pretty big ramp. Also, Atlantis. Atlantis comes up. It's a missing city. It could have had a volcanic eruption and sunk in the sea. Nobody really knows where Atlantis is. But aliens do come up in that talk. Also, back to the Egyptians. They believe, the river god Sobek was a reptilian alien. So that's pretty interesting. There's also, there's lots of types of aliens. Greys are one of the popular types of aliens that there could be. Also, like the reptilians, there has been many sightings of unusual beings out there. I got some details on the Greys, which is very popular when they came into the story of Roswell. We all know that place. I mean, who was going to raid Roswell? I was one of them. I didn't go, but it was kind of strange. This kid that created this sensational Facebook event, and then suddenly, a week later, he bunts out of it. I think somebody said no. So the Greys, they're usually what they claim to be look like, which I've never seen before. I hope I never see them, because I probably would faint, fall down, freak out. were described to be 3 to 4 feet tall, hairless, almond-shaped eyes, which seemed to be bigger than humans, nostrils without a nose. That'd be kind of weird. Just two holes for a nose. Slits for mouths so they wouldn't have lips. No ears. 4 fingers. And also talk with their minds. So they're mostly known with the Roswell incident. You could also go see the pictures of the autopsy. I don't know. Maybe the government one day will come out with it. So that's pretty cool. All right, so now we're going to go to some stories that are famous and unexplained. So there was an incident called the Kelly Hopkinsville Encounter. In 1955, the Sutton family of rural Kentucky saw a light streak across the sky above their house. They then claimed to be attacked by roughly a dozen goblins. Now you think back in that time, they don't really know what that is. It could have been a goblin creature. You never know. So here is an illustration of that incident. So that's not an actual photo. That's like an illustration. So they were roughly attacked by a dozen goblins who were around 3 feet tall with large eyes. They said the creatures floated down from the trees, and when they fired their rifles at them, the bullets made a metallic sound and caused no harm. After holding the creatures at bay for 4 hours, some of the family members drove into town to get the police for help. When they returned, the creatures were gone. Skeptics think the family was just seeing owls. Now, just seeing owls. I've never seen a dozen owls together. I've only seen maybe 1 or 2. They usually fly in pairs. If, like they said, they fired their rifles at them and it made a metallic sound. Last time I checked, owls are not made out of metal. So, this is 1955, up in the hills. I think the aliens made a mistake because in the hills of Kentucky, I would not bother those people. Not saying they're bad people. I'm sure they're great people. But I think the aliens made a mistake. All right, the next incident or story, however you want to look at it, is the Battle of Los Angeles. Now, there was a movie made after this. A lot of movies are inspired by aliens, but we'll get to that later. So there was actually an event called Battle of Los Angeles. Here is an actual newspaper article, or front page actually. Back then, maybe that's what they saw. I don't know if that's the actual photo. It's the very top big one. I don't know what's happening in the other photos. But anyway, late in the evening of February 24th, 1942, just months after the U.S. entered World War II, something flew into Los Angeles airspace. This triggered a massive response by the Army, who fired over 1,400 shells into the sky for an hour, yet they never were able to shoot whatever it was out of the sky. The event was later labeled a false alarm triggered by a weather balloon. Now you see, they always blame weather balloons on incidents like that. Maybe that's what they did back then. And exhilarated by hysteria but an infamous photo seems to show a craft lift up by spotlight. So I guess that is the actual picture. So if you look at the picture, it's very old. There obviously is something there. Now, if they fired 1,400 shells, you think that balloon would fall out of the sky? I would think so. But yes, the government later said it was a weather balloon. So this was obviously entered World War II. They believe Japan was attacking them. I could see why they would go pretty crazy, especially what happened later or earlier. So 1,400 shells, that's a lot. So I don't know what happened after. They never really say what happened after the craft in the sky. Did it crash and they covered it up? Or did it disappear? Nobody knows. It seems to be a lot with these incidents. Nobody knows what happens after. This area is very active, I would say, as the sky is very active. Phoenix, Arizona. In March 13th, 1997, there was a triangle shape of lights which thousands and thousands of people saw. And they just didn't see it in Arizona. I believe they saw them in Nevada and part of Mexico too. So here is the picture here. So as you can see, it is a triangle type shape. So thousands of witnesses all over the state, including the governor at the time, reported seeing a massive V-shaped object flying slowly and slightly overhead. Now, when you see that, people think, oh, it's a B-2 bomber. But, thousands of people, when I see that photo, that's way too big to be a plane. That's like a huge plane. Now, those planes are big, but the lights are usually a little closer, not that big. They have, they're a stealth bomber. I don't know if they have lights on the bottom, come to think of it. But they have flashing lights, I believe. Plus, they wouldn't be that low in an area like that. I mean, that's like a mall right there, and it's just right up there. So the object, which had changing lights, was a mile across in size. So that rules out the stealth bomber right away. And was seen to block out stars. That is a really big craft. It made its way southeast, covering nearing the entire state before it disappeared. So that is, Arizona is pretty big. So, it's very interesting. Obviously, it was not a plane. It was a UFO. So, Arizona's big. It was also spotted in Nevada and the Mexican state, Sonora. So, as it got more southeast, people were saying that it looked like a wood square. The triangle tool that woodworkers like myself use. So, that's pretty interesting. So, it was around 7:30 p.m. and 10:30 p.m. Mountain Time, in a space about 300 miles from the Nevada line. So it went through Phoenix to the edge of Tucson. There's two distant events involved in this incident. So there was a triangle formation of lights. to pass over the state, and a series of stationary lights seen in the Phoenix area. The United States Air Force identified the second group of lights as flares dropped by 810 Warthog. But I believe people were saying this was quiet, with a lot of UFO sightings. So I live out in the boonies. We have warthogs here. They're not quiet. You know when they're coming. So that's pretty interesting. You know, it said there was training exercises going on. But, yeah. People claim to seen a huge Carpenter square-shaped UFO containing 5 spherical lights or possibly light-emitting engines. Even the governor said the object was otherworldly. The governor of Arizona. So, incidents like this actually happened. So I would say that was a very big UFO, and where did it go? It's like I would like to know. All right, the next one is a story, is an alien abduction case by a man named Travis Walton. Now Travis, he was a lumberjack. They actually made a movie called Fire in the Sky based on his story that he told. He tells the same story over and over. I actually watched Fire in the Sky. It was pretty neat movie. Terrifying, but it was a really good movie. So this is also another sketch or art of what happened out there by the other witnesses. It just wasn't him as I read this story. So, yeah. So, while working in the Apache National Forest in Arizona on November 5th, 1975, logger Travis Walton disappeared after seeing a UFO. He wouldn't be at sea again for 5 days. The men who were with him when he disappeared were originally suspected of murdering him. Yet they all passed polygraph tests having to do with their UFO story. So that's good evidence there. When Walton reappeared malnourished and dazed, he claimed to have been abducted by alien beings who experimented on him. His story was later immortalized in the terrifying film Fire in the Sky. Now, that film is pretty crazy. If that actually happened to him, I don't know how he could live on. Because, man, it was crazy. So, if you haven't seen Fire in the Sky and you like alien-based movies, go see it. It's a pretty cool, interesting story. They try to make it, it's really hard to depict what actually happened, but it's a very interesting story, and he passed polygraph tests as well, so obviously it happened. So if you're out in the woods and you see a UFO, don't go towards it, run. Or actually get a picture, then run. But anyway, the next story is it's another abduction case. It's very well known in the UFO community. This was the first widely reported abduction case and became the gold standard for all alien abduction tropes you know. Now, if you don't know who I'm talking about, I am talking about Betty and Barney Hill. A UFO that interferes with a car, missing time, amnesia and the strangeries of the Greys, conducting a physical examination that includes reproductive experiments and, yes, probing. I'm not going to go there. You know what I mean. The case today reads like a checklist for alien abductions, but it's what couple Betty and Barney Hill claim happened to them on September 19th, 1961. While out for a drive in a rural New Hampshire, and the stories the pair revealed under hypnosis. So they're under hypnosis going into the subconscious were remarkably similar. So they had similar stories, being unconscious, being hypnotized. So that's really interesting. Betty even drew a star map during one session that she said she saw on a board of the spacecraft. That's interesting. Which some believe shows the aliens' homeworld as being in the Zeta Reticuli system, 39 light years from Earth. That's pretty far away. So this is pretty very famous story. So if I remember right, they were driving, and suddenly they noticed it was 2 hours later. They don't remember whatever happened. I do believe they did find scars on their bodies, triangle shaped, which are common with abduction cases. So, also they bring up the Greys. So, the Greys are pretty active, doing whatever they're doing. You know, there are a lot of people speculate, could they be watching us? Are they the creators of us? You never know. So, Betty and Barney Hill is one of the most famous story besides Roswell, but probably the second famous, anything to do with aliens. All right, our last story is the granddaddy of them all. We know what we're waiting for. Roswell. All right. So, I actually went to Roswell, New Mexico, and I actually went on a tour. Now, I didn't see the base, but we went with a man. He was an author of a book. I couldn't tell you the book. This was about 15 years ago. I went with just me and my parents. Roswell's a very interesting place. It's very artsy, but it's pretty cool. A lot of the alien stuff when I was there wasn't really around, but they do have a McDonald's shaped like a UFO. It's pretty cool. So while we were there, we went supposedly to the aircraft hangar where they took the bodies and then took them to Roswell. So it was, it was an interesting story. It was a good tour and everything, but we didn't go to the actual Roswell gate, the famous gate where it says stop or you'll be shot. But here is a little history if you don't know Roswell. So, in 1947, supposedly, many believe a flying saucer from another world containing aliens were sent to be stored at Area 51 in Nevada. Area 51 is a very protective government airfield surrounded by mountains. I think at one time it wasn't on maps, and then finally, I think it was under Obama said they said Area 51 does exist. So 1947 to when Obama was president, they finally said Area 51 exists. So for years, the U.S. Air Force claimed it to be a weather balloon, as you could see in the picture here. Was actually a high altitude balloon meant to monitor Soviet nuclear weapons testing. Regardless of what you believe, there's no doubt that the Roswell incident continues to be the most famous UFO story in the world. That is true. Now, while we were on the tour, the thing I never heard about was they called the local undertaker and asked for 3 child-sized coffins, and so they would bring the child coffins to the coroner's office back in the day, and then they took them to the Roswell. So I wonder why they would ask for small coffins. Obviously, there wasn't like they claimed a weather balloon and then it crashed on some kids. I don't think that's what happened. But yeah, it's very interesting. Very interesting. Okay, there's one last thing I wanted to say. Does anybody remember the War of the Worlds, which was inspired by an alien invasion? 1938, H.G. Wells' novel The War of the Worlds was performed and broadcast live on October 30th. It was a Halloween special over the Columbia Broadcasting System radio network. And I think back in those days, that's how you get your news. On the radio, sitting beside the old-timey radio, sitting there, getting the news, people reading the paper. So when they played this, it actually made people panic. People were going crazy that there was actually a Martian invasion going on, but it was actually somebody just reading the novel. So that brings me to pop culture. Aliens are very famous in pop culture. That's where the little green man, which is nobody has actually seen a little green man. That's just the pop culture version. So this topic has inspired many movies and TVs. So comment down below your favorite movie, alien-based movie, or TV show, or stream show, whatever you would call it now. So I could name all the movies or TVs, but we would be on here for 24 hours. So I'm going to say my favorites, and we'll see if we both like the same thing. So growing up, I would always watch a certain alien that lived in somebody's garage. Everybody remember Alf? The intergalactic #1 cat lover. That was a great little sitcom back in the day. You also have Star Trek, both movies, both TV series. That was probably a lot of inspiration. People now are trying to create warp speed. X-Files. X-Files is also movie as well. Big into the unknown cases by the government And of course, everybody's favorite alien, E.T. That was really a great story, um, where human and alien come together, fly in a bicycle across the forest with the moon in the background. Very historical memory of that show. And now you have Star Wars. Star Wars has it's alien inspired. You go across millions of galaxies and you see many different types of aliens. You also have Independence Day. Who remembers seeing the whole city blow up? I saw that at a very young age. Uh, I'm okay, kind of. But anyway, Independence Day, great movie. Alien, just Alien. Horror, alien type movies are great. And then a movie that I saw young, but I'm not blaming my parents or anything. It got me really into sci fi like my father was. He introduced me to Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Now, that movie is pretty cool. And if you did not know this, there was which is actual fact, there was a government department called the Blue Book. Actually, one of the agents of the Blue Book helped write that movie. So a lot of that makes you think it could be real. So that was one of my favorite movies. Even Muncie, Indiana, which it never happened in Muncie, Indiana, but Muncie, Indiana is in that movie. I found it pretty cool. And then this TV show, which I'm currently watching, is my favorite, is Resident Alien. An alien that comes to Earth disguised as a human who's supposed to blow up the planet Earth because he hates humans, but then he gets to liking humans and realize humans are not bad and is currently trying to save planet Earth. Great TV show. If you haven't seen it, it's on Sci-Fi. Well, guys, we're going to end the podcast tonight. I hope you enjoyed everything I said. Hit the like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification. So with that being said, rise up and breathe fire. Good night, guys.